The dawn of freedom shone once more across our glorious isle. The sacred cause for which they died still lives within our minds. For Ireland, Mother Ireland, you bore a bitter loss when you lost 8 true and noble sons at Ballyseedy Cross. A coide tá fáilte go léir go bhí an áit seo an áit go hána speisiúilta seo anew. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the National Graves Association, I would like very much to thank all of you for coming here today for this commemoration in this sacred spot. I'm particularly aware that there are many people here who are relatives of volunteers of this period, and we especially thank you for coming today. The roll of honour of the men who were murdered in this spot is Patrick Buckley, Scarta Glynn, John Daly, Dolly Fahadov, Pat Harnett, Listowel, Michael O'Connell, Fahadov, John O'Connor, Liverpool, George O'Shea, Kilflynn, Tim Toomey, Kilflynn, and James Walsh from Tralee. I'd also like to give a very special word of thanks today and to bring everybody's attention to the fact that this magnificent monument was erected by the Ballyseedy Monument Committee, who not only erected it, but have maintained it to this day. And the fine way the monument is laid out today and how clean it is and how well prepared it is entirely due to the Ballyseedy Memorial Committee. The men commemorated in this sacred place were victims of a campaign of extrajudicial murder against Republicans during the Civil War. Unarmed men in custody, defenceless, were taken by their captors and murdered, often after days of brutality. The actions of the Free State forces in relation to these murders and the others of this period were clearly acts of war crimes. They were completely in contravention of all the rules of war, including the Geneva Convention, both then and to this day. Captors under the rules of war not only have an obligation to treat their captives justly, they have an obligation to protect them. Following the outbreak of the Civil War, the extrajudicial murders commenced almost immediately and prominently with the murder of Harry Boland in Skerries in 1923 on the 22 and the 2nd of August. Just a few weeks later, they commenced here in Kerry. The first murders occurred when 2 men were taken from their homes in Tralee at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning, taken to a field, and both men were shot multiple times. The 2 were Jim Healy, who feigned death and survived, and Sean Moriarty, who lost his life. The following month, Jack Galvin from Killorglin was taken by truck with other prisoners from Killorglin, supposedly to go to Tralee. He was removed from the truck at Ballyseedy Wood, just around the corner from here, where he was shot and left in a ditch. Later that month, young Herbert Murphy from Killarney was removed from his prison cell in Killarney in what is now the Great Southern Hotel and thrown down a flight of stairs and shot. Following the death of Hubert Murphy, there began what was to become a pattern of official lies, official denials, and an official cover-up. The Free State authorities issued a statement saying that Herbert Murphy had been killed in a gun battle in Brennan's Glen. That was a lie, but nonetheless a lie that remains the official version of events to this day. And so we come to the terrible events that happened in this place 90 years ago this week. Historians tell us that these events and those at Countess Bridge and Cahersaveen were direct retaliation by the Dublin Guards or the Free State Army for an ambush trap mine attack which killed 5 Free State soldiers in Knocknagoshel a couple of days earlier. While this is true, we must not let it shade the fact that the Free State forces had already committed at least 11 such extrajudicial murders here in Kerry alone in the 5 months preceding Ballyseedy. These murders continued right up to and well beyond the end of the Civil War. In fact, during the Civil War period, there were approximately 140 such extrajudicial murders. Of those, 47 to 50 occurred here in Kerry. Also, of the 77 volunteers who were officially murdered, 10 were from Kerry. So Ballyseedy wasn't simply revenge or retaliation for Knocknagoshel, but part of a brutal and bitter assault on the Republican community of Kerry, often referred to even then as the last defenders of the Republic. The whole country was quickly to become aware of the brutal murders that occurred in this place. Numerous IRA volunteers had been held in Ballymullen Barracks in Tralee. On the 7th of March, 9 volunteers were selected by David Nelligan and taken to this spot. They were tied together to each other and trussed up, placed around a barricade that contained a mine, and they were suddenly blown to pieces. When the mine exploded, most of the men were blown to pieces while the remaining bodies were riddled with machine gun fire. Miraculously, one man, Stephen Fuller, survived to tell the tale. Though badly wounded, he made his escape. He was taken to the Dolly family home near Fireys, where he was recuperating from his wounds. Little did the Dolly family know at the time that their son, Charlie, 7 days after Ballyseedy, was to be executed in Drumgold Castle. Of course, the Free State forces weren't sated with the murders here. The following night they arrived in Killarney, where the same series of events occurred. Miraculously in Killarney, one man, Ty Coffey, was also blown clear and also escaped. A few days later they arrived in Cahersaveen, where they removed 5 young, and they were very young prisoners in Cahersaveen. One of them was 17, one was 18. They repeated a series of events, except this time they had learned by their lessons with the escape of Stephen Fuller and Ty Coffey, and all 5 young men were shot repeatedly in the legs at Cahersaveen before being thrown onto the mine. The Free State authorities were very quick to issue their official version of events. They said that all 3 mines had been placed by Republican forces, that the Republicans who died in Ballyseedy and in Killarney died more or less by accident while removing the barricade, and they even said that the 5 volunteers murdered in Cahersaveen had died in a 2-hour gun battle. Clearly that's a tissue of lies, but it remains the official version of events to this day. The ultimate responsibility on a local level here in Kerry for all the murders during the Civil War period laid with Brigadier General Paddy Daly. If he didn't order these terrible murders, he was certainly aware of them, and he certainly sanctioned them in advance. He was later to write, "Nobody told me to bring kid gloves to Kerry, and I didn't bring them," a clear admission of his own responsibility. Yet when the Free State Minister of Defence, Richard Mulcahy, was forced to hold a military inquiry into these events, he put the same Brigadier General Paddy Daly in charge of the inquiry, and not surprisingly, the inquiry returned a whitewash. But yet the results of that inquiry remain the official version of events of what happened here. But today we know the truth about these events, and in many cases we know the truth in extreme detail. For example, here in Ballyseedy, we know that Free State's captains Jim Clark and Ed Bresnett prepared a murder scene. We know that Commandant David Nelligan selected the prisoners to be murdered. We know that Captains Eddie Flood and Jim Clark prepared and detonated the mine. We know that Captain Ed Bresnett was in charge of the death squad. We know that Brigadier General Paddy Daly was aware of this, and on the balance of the evidence we believe that he ordered it. And we know that Free State Minister of Defence Richard Mulcahy put the same Brigadier General Daly in charge of the official inquiry. Yet today none of this appears as an official version of events. We cannot leave here without also looking at the murder of Captain Jeremiah O'Leary, the last of the Republicans to be murdered in Kerry during the Civil War period. He was captured and taken to Castle Island a week or 2 after the end of the Civil War. That was then a Free State military barracks. On the 9th of May, orders came from Tralee that the war was over and he was to be released. However, he was taken to the yard, he was ordered to close the gates, and he was shot. But again, we know now much more about this. We know that he was taken into the yard by a Captain O'Donnell. We know that he was shot in the back by both Lieutenant McGinn and Captain Byrne. And we know that after he fell, he was shot twice more by Captain Nolan. And we know that Captain O'Donnell stayed in the yard and watched the whole event. But once again, none of this appears in any official record of events. In times of difficulty, we can get great inspiration from men and women such as the men we commemorate here today. People who entered the political world with no possibility of personal gain. People prepared to sacrifice their lives for their country, in stark contrast to some of the politicians we have today, quite willing to sacrifice their country for their lifestyles. We honour with pride the men who died here and elsewhere in Kerry, and men like Commandant Charlie Dawley. He and his 3 comrades who were executed in Drumgold Castle were offered release if they would sign a piece of paper saying they would no longer take up arms against the state. And yet, in the words of the Four Courts Declaration, they chose death before dishonour. As indeed did Ty Coffey and Jeremiah O'Donoghue, who were taken to the mine in Killarney, although Ty Coffey survived. Both of them were offered commissions in the Free State Army if they would change sides. Again, they chose death before dishonour. In fact, there's a recently published book called Death Before Dishonour, which covers all of the extrajudicial murders during the Civil War period. We in the NGA welcome the fact that a number of inquiries in recent years have revealed truth, shocking and painful though that truth may be. It is now way past time that there was a full and independent inquiry, not only into the events of Ballyseedy, but of all the extrajudicial murders carried out during the Civil War period. It is time to set the record straight. A proper independent inquiry is the very least we can demand if we wish to live in a society that respects truth, that respects honesty, that respects justice, and that puts historical truth above modern spin. The very least we can expect is a proper inquiry that makes the official history reflect the truth. We have all come here today to respect and honour the men commemorated in this spot. Justice can never be fully given to them or their families. The next best thing we can obtain for them is that the truth be told. Sleep on, brave Kerry men, in your lonely scattered graves. From Countess Bridge Killarney to Clashmelcon's lonely caves. They gave their lives for freedom and bore their bitter loss on the bloody road from Easter week to Ballyseedy Cross. The phrase "Up the Republic" were the last spoken words of at least one of the men who died here and several others who died in Kerry and elsewhere. A phrase of aspiration was turned into one of defiance and resistance. A card tá fáilte rih go léir mar bhfuil tú anseo inniu agus an phoblacht a bú.